Steven Nelson blames his conviction on his lawyers, says he got bad advice and that the system was stacked against him from the beginning. He also adds that important evidence was ignored in his case.
Because my lawyers at that time, Bill Ray, Steve Gordon, told me not to testify. Because during that trial, they only did surface stuff. They didn't investigate my other two co-defendants. They didn't investigate anything. So to me, I'm like, man, I should tell my own story. I should tell what happened play by play. So that's what I did. And right before trial, I asked the DA, can I take a lie detector test? He told me no. He said I was an easy conviction. I want to say that all the evidence, the new evidence, and the evidence that my lawyers, trial lawyers in that time didn't present, it shows that I did not kill anybody. It also shows how the judicial system is made for you to lose at all costs, no matter what. And that shouldn't be right. And, you know, like doctors, state doctors, stuff like that, she said that I was automatically a future danger because I'm a minority, because I'm black. And that's unfair to judge somebody by the color of their skin. I'm automatically guilty. And that shouldn't be that.
Steven Nelson says he tried to reach out to the pastor's family through the church, but says they asked the Department of Corrections in Texas to block him. When asked about what he would say to the church secretary who survived the 69-year-old woman, here's how he answered.
I will tell her that I would like to apologize, you know, for my actions in the role that I played, even though I wasn't the person who assaulted her. And it still hurts to this day that I couldn't do nothing at the time, you know? And I keep thinking, like, what if that was one of my family members, you know? And I wrote a letter to them, but the church denied the letter. And because that really hurt me, you know? Because your organization of Christ, you know, and it's always redemption and a second chance. I just want to say that this will be my last interview, because I have my execution day is next Wednesday, and that people do deserve second chances. You know, I'm not a lost cause. I'm not beyond help. I'm not broken. My foundation might have been cracked 13 years ago, but my foundation is whole now. And I'm not the monster they say that I am, which I'm not.
Steven Nelson does admit that he deserves to be locked up for his role in the crimes, but there is something else that you should know about Steven Nelson. During the last 13 years in prison, he says he's been working on himself, that he's done a, quote, 360 from where he was, and that his case deserves another chance. This despite the fact that while he was locked up, he was also accused of another murder. So, there's that.
February 5th, 2025, Steven Lawayne Nelson was executed for the 2011 murder of Pastor Clint Dobson during a church robbery in Arlington, Texas. But until his final breath, Nelson maintained he was only a lookout and didn't kill anyone. As lethal injection drugs flowed into his veins, Nelson told his wife Helene, "Let me go to sleep," and said the word love before gasping twice, trembling, and dying 24 minutes later at 6:50 p.m. His final words? "I'm not scared. I'm at peace. Let's ride, Warden." This is the story of Texas' first execution of 2025, a man who married his pen pal on death row, and the controversial conviction that divided religious leaders over whether he deserved to die. March 3, 2011, North Point Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. 28-year-old Pastor Clint Dobson was sitting in his office writing a sermon when 3 men entered the church to commit a robbery that would end in brutal murder. Dobson was strangled with a computer extension cord and smothered with a plastic bag. Police pronounced him dead at the scene. The autopsy found that his cause of death was strangulation. The church secretary, 69-year-old Judy Elliott, was also brutally attacked. Elliott suffered internal bleeding in her brain and injuries to her face, head, arms, legs, and back. She survived the attack. The victims were later found by Elliott's husband, the church's part-time music minister, who didn't immediately recognize her because she had been so severely beaten. The attack was so vicious that when Judy's husband discovered the crime scene, he couldn't even recognize his own wife. Police quickly identified Steven Lawayne Nelson as their primary suspect. The then 24-year-old Nelson entered North Point Baptist Church in Arlington to commit a robbery. The evidence against Nelson was substantial. Blood from both victims was found on a pair of Nelson's shoes, and studs from his belt were found at the church. Trial evidence showed Nelson's fingerprints and pieces of his broken belt at the crime scene, drops of the victim's blood on his sneakers, and surveillance video showing him driving Elliott's car and using her credit cards. Dobson's laptop, a cell phone, Elliott's credit cards, and Elliott's car were stolen following the attack. Nelson failed to report to his probation officer on the day of the murder. Police recovered belongings from Dobson and Elliott that were in Nelson's possession. DNA from bloodstains found on Nelson's shoes matched the 2 victims. The physical evidence was overwhelming, but Nelson had a very different version of events. Nelson testified at trial and has maintained that he waited outside the church for about 25 minutes before going in and seeing that Dobson and the secretary had been beaten, and he insisted Dobson was still alive. Nelson said he took Dobson's laptop and that one of the other men gave him Elliott's car keys and credit cards. Nelson admitted to being present during the robbery. He admitted to taking stolen items. He admitted to driving away in Judy Elliott's car. But he maintained until his final breath that he didn't kill Pastor Dobson or beat Judy Elliott. Investigators also said the 2 men Nelson blamed for the attack had detailed alibis. The prosecution argued that Nelson's story was a transparent attempt to avoid responsibility. The 2 men he blamed had solid alibis. The evidence pointed to Nelson as the killer. Steven Nelson's background painted a picture of a man who had been in trouble with the law for most of his life. Nelson was a laborer and high school dropout with a long history of legal trouble and arrests that started as early as age 6. 3 days before the murder, Nelson had been released from a court-ordered anger management program, part of a deal with Dallas County prosecutors after he was arrested for aggravated assault on his girlfriend. He earlier had served time behind bars for a 2-year sentence for theft and spent much of his teen years in juvenile facilities after committing various crimes. Nelson, born in Oklahoma, suffered physical and sexual abuse throughout his childhood, which his defense team during his sentencing hearing claimed affected his criminal record prior to the Dobson murder. The defense argued that Nelson's traumatic childhood had created a damaged adult who made terrible choices but wasn't beyond redemption. The prosecution argued that Nelson's history showed he was exactly the kind of violent criminal who would murder a pastor during a robbery. During his trial, jurors unanimously agreed that Nelson posed a danger to society and should face the death penalty. The sentencing phase revealed another disturbing detail. While awaiting trial, Nelson was indicted in the killing of another jail inmate. He was never tried on that charge after his guilty verdict and death sentence. "It is hard for me to fathom that you did what you did for a car and a laptop and a phone," Dobson's father-in-law, Philip Roseman, said in a statement after the sentencing. "The world is going to miss a leader. It's sad to know all the people that won't be helped because Clint is not here." Steven Nelson was sentenced to death and sent to Texas death row, where he would spend the next 13 years fighting his conviction and maintaining his innocence. Steven Lawayne Nelson was executed Wednesday for killing an Arlington pastor, a crime he maintained he did not commit, though he admitted he was there for a robbery while the murder occurred. Nelson, 37, was injected with a lethal dose of pentobarbital and pronounced dead at 6:50 p.m. Wednesday, According to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the execution is Texas' first in 2025. In his final words, Nelson expressed he was unafraid of the execution and was at peace. He did not mention the crime for which he was executed. "I'm thankful and grateful. It is what it is," Nelson said. "Always live for me and enjoy life." The execution itself revealed the clinical but disturbing nature of how Texas carries out the death penalty. As the lethal dose of the sedative pentobarbital was being given, Nelson told Helene Noah Du Bois, who married him recently while he was in prison, "Let me go to sleep." The drug appeared to take effect as he said the word, "love." Then he gasped twice and appeared to try to hold his breath. His head, shoulders, and arms trembled for a few seconds before all movement stopped. He was pronounced dead 24 minutes later.